Hello friends, welcome back to my channel. Today we will be discussing my progression in salary over the years in hopes to illuminate basically how I not only started getting into budgeting but basically how my salary has progressed, and hopefully it keeps progressing throughout the years. But this is my current standpoint as a 27-year-old. I live in the East Coast as well. So let's get started. So to start, I didn't actually have a job until I graduated university. And then I graduated university in 2020, May 2020. And at that point, I had already been applying and stuff like that and interviewing. Um, so I became a enumerator for the Census Bureau, and basically this is where you walk around and make sure that all the houses address are in correctly, and yeah, that's basically what it was. It was a part-time, short-term job, but I was getting paid $14.50, and for it to be my first job, I was very happy with that. And also, it is a government job, so it was a very stable 3 months of work with hours that were stable and stuff like that. So I worked as an enumerator from May to July 2020, making $14.50. And at the same time, because I knew this was going to be a very short-term job, I was applying to other, anything basically that I could find, not only part-time but also within my field of study. However, I got a position as a cashier at a local supermarket at in June. So as well as an enumerator, I had a 1.5 month overlap that I was also being a part-time cashier at a supermarket and their deli. So from June to August, I was making $7.25. So half of the amount that I was making as an enumerator, and my hours weren't stable. However, it was money that I was, bringing in as well. Again, same thing with the first job. I knew this is not something that I wanted to stay at, so I was still applying, I was still looking. And that same year in August, I interviewed to be like a filler position for a teacher, like a science teacher. So this position paid $14.50 as well, and then it was a contracted position. So from August 2020 to May 2021, I was a science teacher with a school, making $14.50. I also, resigned from the cashier because I was like, I feel like being a teacher is a lot, and there was a lot of skills that I didn't know, frankly, because that's not what I studied in. So I really wanted to focus so that I could do a good job, and yeah, so that was a very good experience. I learned a lot of new skills. It was basically my first real job where I learned interpersonal skills, organizational skills, and I really am grateful for that opportunity as well. And then this moves me to, in May 2021. Again, it's something that I knew I wasn't gonna want to do long term, so I was still applying. And then at this moment, I kind of was getting frustrated with not being able to get anything else. So I asked my parents um, to move back home and see if I could find positions here where they live. And they said that yeah, their house was always open. So I applied uh, to positions in Puerto Rico and then in the States. And I got an interview, like a phone interview, um, for my current employer, and they hired me. So um, I became a medical laboratory scientist trainee, And basically, the training portion of that is because I didn't have any clinical laboratory experience. And according to regulations, I need a whole year for me to be called a medical laboratory scientist. So that's basically where I was. And then this jumped my pay from 14.50 as a teacher to $21 an hour. That's what they were paying at the time for their trainees. And again, I was so happy with that number that I was like, yeah, like this is great. I made it, right? So, um, I'm still with my current employer. So the next few salaries are basically over the years. I've been with them for 4.5 years now. So, after my first year as a trainee, I became a medical laboratory scientist. And because of my credentials in terms of schooling, I have a chemistry major. I became a medical laboratory scientist too. And this bumped up my pay from $21 to $32. And that was the base pay at the time for my current position. Granted, I think this changes as well if you had like your masters and stuff like that, but I only have my bachelor's, uh, so yeah. And then my company every March basically does adjustments, and they do like around 2.5 to 3% um, increases in your pay. So in March 2023, sorry, um, March 2024, I got a 3% raise to 33.18. So then from March 2025 to October 2025, I was making 35.89 an hour as a as a medical scientist too. And the thing that changed and why this says October 2025 is because I applied to be a group lead for my team. I, at the time, am one of the more senior members of my team, believe it or not, with 4.5 years. And I know a couple of the tests that our department runs. So I applied. I had already been helping a lot of people out with their daily tasks. So I felt like this is something that I could do. It's actually one of the parts that I enjoy most about my job. So I applied, I interviewed, and I got hired as an MLS, which medical laboratory scientist, group lead. So as of October 2025, my pay went to 41.43, um, which, not only am I grateful for the opportunity to become the group lead, but also for that raise as well, or like that promotion. And then I got the adjustment in March 2026, which bumped up my pay to 42.61. So my current pay is 42.61. And not only is it a big progression from when I started with the company in 2021 at $21 an hour, but also where I started at my first job in 2020 at 14.50. So I am, eternally grateful for my company, not only for the opportunities that they have given me, but also for the growth that I've experienced in there as well. And all my hours in my current company are subjected to a 10% shift differential just because I work weird hours. But hey, more money. I'm not complaining. And then yeah, I'm really looking forward to see where I continue on with my career next. Thanks for watching, guys. Have a good one.